You're listening to The Unsafe Bible with Pastor Ken Brown.
When you take a look at what it says, and dominion was given it. God was going to allow this nation to take over, period. God was behind this. What you're seeing is God is the one who stands up a nation, and he's the one that says they're done. It's God who does it. And God's saying that this speedy nation, this speedy conqueror, is the one who has dominion. They're the ones who are going to take over. Was Alexander a great strategist? Yeah, he was, but this was a God thing.
Here's your daily reminder. Nothing surprises God. Did you know God knows exactly what's going to happen in this world and for the end of time? After all, He is the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end, as it says in the Bible. Pastor Ken affirms this truth with Daniel, the prophet's words that God allows things to happen. God cares about this world and the people that inhabit it so much that He continues to orchestrate everything. That everything includes you. Today, why not trust the author of your life story? Well, let's join Pastor Ken in the book of Daniel, chapter 7, as he continues his message, World History in Advance.
As I looked, its wings were plucked off, and it was lifted from the ground and made to stand on 2 feet like a man, and the mind of a man was given to it. Now, as soon as I read this, my mind immediately comes to some of the images that we see that come from Babylon. So in the Pergamum Museum in Berlin, you see winged lions that have human heads, okay? And this, verse 4, is Babylon. But this is an example. This is in the museum there. These were taken directly from Babylon. And you read what it says in the scriptures, and it says the first was like a lion, had eagle's wings, okay, and the wings were plucked off, and it was made to stand on 2 feet like a man. Well, it has the head of a man, too. And when you start reading this, you immediately go, yeah, that's the imagery that was used in Babylon for their false god worship, and they actually made multiple statues of this all throughout the area. The Assyrians did the same thing. So you'll see this in Assyria, in Mosul, which was Nineveh, and then also in Babylon as well. That's what it looks like. This first animal is enormous, okay? A lion is a vicious animal, but it has wings of an eagle, which means it has speed too. Not only is it vicious, it can move quickly. It was a lot like the statues, again, like we just saw here. But the wings suggest the power of the Babylonian Empire, and as you study the history of Babylon, they would move quickly and attack, and they'd move 500, 800 miles and then attack, and they'd do it quickly. And then they would move again, and they would move quickly. They were very, very fast, but they were also very aggressive. And once they attacked, they kept the territory. They didn't want to give it up. The wings, power, majesty of the empire, maybe, but those wings get plucked. And this is where people start wondering, well, what's this all about? The wings are plucked, and then the lion stands up on its hind legs. And it's given a man's heart. Now, some commentators take a look at that and say, okay, this is what happened when Nebuchadnezzar became a believer. It's a picture of the empire, which was a reflection of Nebuchadnezzar, becoming human. In other words, it's becoming like it should be. Now, or is it saying that it's going to lose its animal-like tendencies and quit attacking people? Because at one point, after Nebuchadnezzar died, they quit attacking folks. Nebuchadnezzar's the one who did all the attacking. Nobody else did. He maintained the kingdom. Everybody else just kind of lived off the fat of the land after he was gone. And they quit being aggressive. I personally think that it's a picture of what happened to Nebuchadnezzar, and we're seeing it reflected in the overall impact of the empire, that the empire became a little bit more humane and started to reflect more of what it should be reflecting, but not exactly. And it's possible he's also revealing that he's showed the king before Babylon will fall. Some of this stuff you can kind of guess, and some of it's really clear. I think it's a picture of Nebuchadnezzar, but it's definitely Babylon. We know the first beast is that. Okay, great, we got that satisfied. And Daniel's receiving this prophecy, and he's actually going to be there in Belshazzar's presence the night it all falls apart and Babylon ceases to be. He's going to physically be there and see his own prophecy come true. And we just read that in chapter 5 and chapter 6. Okay, so now we come to the next beast. And this is in verse 5. And behold, another beast, a second one, like a bear. It's not a bear, but it's like a bear, raised up on one side. So you have a bear, or you have a large animal like a bear laying on its side, picking its teeth with 3 ribs. Okay, that's the picture. And he's being told while he's doing that, hey, get up and go eat a lot of meat. It's a bear. It's not a bear, but it's like a bear. So it's a big, furry animal, and kind of the way I see it is there's this large, furry animal with blood coming out of its mouth as it's chewing on these ribs, and it's just on one side, which indicates, as you start looking at it, okay, one side versus another side. Well, you have the Medes and the Persians, right? One side, the Medes, eventually lost power to the Persians and wound up being the Persian Empire. But initially it was both. But the Persians were always the more powerful of the two. Now, the first beast we saw had wings. It was speedy, right? A bear, or a creature like a bear, yeah, a bear can move quickly. They can go 30 miles an hour, but nowhere like a lion with wings. You know, it can't move that fast. So what you're seeing is a rather ponderous beast. In fact, when Greece was invaded by the Persian army, they showed up with 2 million men. You can't move real quick with 2 million men. Not possible. Large, ponderous empire that could not move very quickly. They achieved what they needed to achieve, but once they got it, they couldn't move fast. Now, the ribs, there are 3 ribs, and there are at least 3 different opinions as to what those are. Maybe 4, maybe 5. There are some commentators who say, well, it's the Medes, the Persians, and the Babylonians. Well, it doesn't work because the beast is sitting there chewing on the Medes, Persians, and the Babylonians. That doesn't work. Another is it refers to the nations that formed an alliance to fight them, Lydia, Egypt, and Babylon. We don't know. The scriptures don't tell us what the ribs are. So if you read any commentaries and they're telling you the ribs mean this, the ribs mean that, we really don't know. It's 3 ribs, okay? I have no idea what they mean. I can conjecture all over the place, but I can't come up to an answer. It says devour much flesh. I mean, you caught that. And what that's alluding to is that there's going to be a large number of nations they're going to conquer. And when they conquer, they're going to be rather vicious in terms of how they do it. They're going to oppress them, in other words. But they didn't oppress the Jews. So you look at this and you read it and you go, well, but they did this to the other nations, but the Persians were really good to the Jews. They paid for them to rebuild the temple. They paid for them to rebuild Jerusalem. They were really good to them. But Isaiah 41, 2 and 3, we see something else. This is part of Isaiah's prophecy, and he's talking about the Persians as well. And he says, who stirred up one from the east, whom victory meets at every step? He's talking about the Persian army during the point that they were conquering. Every time they attacked a nation, they won. They just did. He gives up nations before him, said he tramples kings underfoot. He makes them like dust with his sword, like driven stubble with his bow. He pursues them and passes on safely by passes his feet have not trod. At its extent, the Persian Empire was rather large, going all the way from Greece to the Indus River in India. And it included everything in between, up into what we call today Russia, Kazakhstan, portions of Afghanistan, as well as all of Iran, most of Saudi Arabia. Quite honestly, anything south of where they say they are, you wouldn't want to go there anyhow. It's kind of hot. And then Egypt and Libya and portions of Ethiopia. It's a large empire. They took a lot of territory. So we've got the first 2 beasts down. So now we come to verse 6. After this I looked, and behold, another like a leopard. Okay, leopards are fast. And this leopard has 4 wings. It's really fast. Like 4 wings of a bird on its back. And the beast had 4 heads. Well, that's different. 4 heads. And dominion was given to it. The basic picture you see with this beast is speed. This is built to be fast. It's built to move quickly. It's all about moving fast. So this beast is speedy. Habakkuk actually used a leopard as a sign of swiftness in Habakkuk 1:8. So, I mean, that's not an unusual image in the scriptures to take a look at it being fast. But the wings on its back, speed, mobility. If you were to look at it today, it would probably be mobile airborne infantry or something such as that. Very, very fast, able to move quickly. This type of imagery indicates the nature of the kings and the armies involved. And immediately you start thinking, okay, we have the Babylonians, then we have the Medes and the Persians, and what follows the Medes and the Persians? The Greeks. Okay, well, what was the signature cornerstone of the Greek Empire? They conquered incredibly fast. Alexander the Great started off in Macedonia, and within no time at all, he was at the Indus River. I mean, he moved quick. Remember this, Alexander the Great, with 35,000 soldiers, met the Medo-Persian army of 200,000 to 300,000 men on one occasion and beat them. And they did that over and over and over again with this small number of troops. Was he a good general? No. Back to verse 6, when you take a look at what it says, and dominion was given it. God was going to allow this nation to take over, period. God was behind this. What you're seeing is God is the one who stands up a nation, and he's the one that says they're done. It's God who does it. And God's saying that this speedy nation, this speedy conqueror, is the one who has dominion. They're the ones who are going to take over. Was Alexander a great strategist? Yeah, he was. But this was a God thing. In fact, as he was moving south through Jerusalem, he was met by the high priest, and the high priest showed him these scriptures from Daniel that he was going to capture. Didn't show him the next one, that they were going to be conquered by the Romans, but he showed him this, and as a result, he actually offered sacrifices to Yahweh in the temple before he went down and conquered Egypt. He left Jerusalem alone. But that's what this is pointing to. Now, this is you'll see different colors, but this is the extent of the kingdom of Greece when they took everything, and the different colors are indicative of how it split up. But again, they went all the way to the Indus River Valley of India, up into Afghanistan, into Russia, all the area that did previously belong to Persia, but they also had all of Greece, they had a good chunk of Africa, all the Middle East. It was a large kingdom, a very large kingdom. And the way Alexander conquered is very interesting. You can see here the path that he started in Greece, and what he did initially was just he was going to set the Macedonian territories free. And then after he did that, he said, well, I'm bored, because he was 20, okay? And when you're 20 and you've got an army, what are you going to do? Well, let's go conquer something. So he did. And he went across, and that's the entire path that he took. He went into what is today Turkey, conquered all of it, and then he kept moving, and he went down through the Promised Land, right down through the Phoenicia, and he took Tyre, and he went into Egypt, and he finally goes north and comes back up to Babylon. So here's the history of this guy. And remember, this is the leopard with the wings, and he's moving quickly, okay? So in 336 BC, he becomes king. He's 20 years old. There are some who say he actually poisoned his dad. We don't know, but that's what some say he did. He liberated Sardis, Ephesus, Miletus, and others, defeating Darius III, the Persian king, with the 300,000 troops in 334 BC. So 2 years later, he's already in Turkey, and he's conquered Turkey. Okay, so now he's 22. If you're 22 and you're bored, what do? Well, you keep attacking, okay? So he continues east, and in 333 BC, again, he meets Darius again, and he beats him again. So now it's, best 2 out of 3. Well, no, he's lost twice. He moves down the coast towards Egypt in 332 BC, and he meets Darius again in 331 BC, actually in September. Then he finally kills him and takes over the entire Persian Empire at that point. He finally reaches the Indus River and then comes back to Babylon. It's 323 BC. Now, 336, 323, 13 years. He comes to Babylon and he dies. There's a famous quote that he said, there's nothing left to conquer. I don't know. But after he died, his kingdom was distributed amongst his 4 generals. There was a little bit of fighting before that happened, but eventually Cassander claimed Macedonia and Greece. By the way, remember these names. We're going to be talking about them again in more detail. Cassander took Macedonia and Greece. Lysimachus took possession of Asia Minor as far as Tarsus. Ptolemy received Egypt, and Seleucus obtained the rest of Asia Minor to the Indus River, including most of the territory of Syria. So we'll have more information about the Ptolemies, the Seleucids, and all of these guys, because Daniel spends a whole chapter talking about them. There's a lot of information. In other words, remember those names. Daniel's going to deal with them in more detail to come. In fact, he's going to go into the family histories, deep detail of the Ptolemies and the Seleucids, and the back and forth battles that take place where Jerusalem's right in the center. But they go back and forth in battle the entire time. So we come to verse 7. Verse 7 is this: After this I saw in the night visions, and behold, a fourth beast, terrifying and dreadful and exceedingly strong. Notice he doesn't say it's like anything. It's just a beast. He doesn't know what to call it. It's kind of like, I said, this one's like a leopard, this one's like a lion, this one's like a bear, this one's like a leopard, and this one's Godzilla, or something like that. If he had watched Japanese movies, he probably would say, and this one's like Godzilla, because it's a big beast. That's what he's talking about. This thing comes walking out of the sea. It's dreadful, terrifying, and exceedingly strong. It had great iron teeth. Imagine that, a beast with iron teeth. It devoured and broke in pieces and stomped what was left with its feet. It was different from all the beasts that were before it, and it had 10 horns. I considered the horns, and behold, there came up among them another horn, a little one, before which 3 of the first horns were plucked up by the roots. And behold, in this horn were eyes like the eyes of a man, and a mouth speaking great things. Now, am I the only one that thinks the fourth beast is weird? Okay? I think it's weird. It's just weird. Iron teeth, stamping whatever's left of his feet, 10 horns, dreadful. It's kind of like, this is an antisocial empire of some kind, is what he's talking about. It's characterized in several ways, okay? Number 1, in verse 7, we see it's dreadful. Okay, there's something we know about this now. 2, they're terrifying. 3, extremely strong. And when we come to the iron teeth in verse 7, it's in a form in Aramaic Hebrew called dual. And what that means is it could be not just one row of teeth, it could be 2 rows of teeth. Or it could also mean it just had 2 big teeth in the front of its mouth. Don't know which, but I'm thinking it's probably 2 rows of teeth. It devoured, it crushed, it trampled down the remainder with its feet. Then we have the 10 horns, a boastful little horn. Oh, and claws of bronze. That's in verse 19. We'll get to that next week. But he gets a description of these beasts, again, from a divine being that he talks to. Now that we have more information about this beast, and we get all this together, the thing is, who is this fourth beast? Well, it's beginning to look like the Roman Empire, okay? Very, very much like it. But it's terrible. It breaks into pieces. It destroys all things. You can't compare it to anything. There's nothing to compare it to. And the description corresponds actually to the fourth kingdom out of chapter 2 of the legs and the feet of iron, but the feet mixed with clay. Because you have 10 toes, now you have 10 horns. So it's kind of like, that's an interesting picture. But the crucial issue for this here in chapter 7 is, who's the fourth beast? There are some folks who look at it and say, oh, it's Greece. It's not, okay? Dr. Walvoord points out that we have to identify who this beast is. It's not Alexander the Great. It's not Greece. It's Rome, okay? This is Rome. Having studied Roman history, there's several characteristics of the Roman military that when they would come and conquer someone, that they would do. First of all, if a legion showed up around your village and they started putting up a siege wall, they were prepared to be there as long as it took to starve you out. If you fought them, then they would kill everybody in the city. They would take the women captive and they'd sell the children. If you surrendered, they'd turn you into a vassal state and make you all slaves. And they didn't care about your culture. All they cared about was what kind of money and what kind of crops you had. And was this a good place to settle more Romans, or do we turn this into a Roman protectorate? In most cases, they just conquered. The Romans did not spread culture, they destroyed culture. And this is the really weird thing. In the Punic Wars, which are against Carthage, when they fought Carthage around 200 BC, the Carthaginians were sacrificing their babies to Molech, okay, because they were worshiping Molech. They were actually worshiping a Canaanite god. The Romans would just take their babies and leave them out in the woods overnight and let a wolf take them. And the Romans thought that the Carthaginians were barbarians and inhuman because of what they were doing to their children. You sit there and go, but you're both bad. When the Romans conquered Carthage, they were so mad at them, they took salt and actually plowed it into the ground around Carthage. You can't grow stuff even today. There are whole sections of forest in what is today Germany, France, a lot of the areas around Italy that we know the land was once forested, but it's not anymore because when the Romans came in, they would build their siege machines and cut down whole forests to do it. They had no consideration for anything that was around. So this picture of this beast is pretty true. I mean, you start taking a look at the way the Romans operated, the way that they worked, and especially when you start studying Roman politics, I wouldn't encourage you to do that unless you like studying U.S. politics, because there's not a lot of difference. The only difference is in Roman politics, if you didn't like it, they'd just stab you and put somebody else in your place. By the way, studying the Roman Senate from 220 BC and the U.S. Senate from 2018, there's no difference. Solomon's right. There's nothing new under the sun. There really isn't. But the Roman Empire is clearly described here in this fourth beast. And by the way, Rome, large. This is the Roman Empire at its fullest extent. It never went to India, and they never conquered the Parthian Empire, which was the section of India. So in the scriptures, when you see the Magi, the wise men, come in to see Jesus, they're coming from the Parthian Empire. The Romans fought a war 15 years before that, and they did not beat them. They beat the Romans. The Parthians were tougher than the Romans were. And then all of a sudden, these three wise men show up with their retinue, probably a couple thousand men. They travel with an army. And they show up and they say, "Where's your king?" No wonder they were a little upset at that time. But you see, this is the extent of their conquering. They took the entire Mediterranean at one point. They used to be called Pax Romana, the peace of Rome. The reason why there was peace was because nobody would dare fight them. They were the first empire to come up with a professional military. They called them legions. They would recruit a group of people all at once, usually teenagers of around 14 years of age. They would enlist for 18 years. And after the end of the first enlistment, they would all be citizens in Rome. Now, if they wanted to, they could re-up for another 18 years. Then they'd be called centurions and officers. And after that, if they wanted another 18 years, they'd be higher-ranking officers. But, I mean, you had a professional military. That's what these guys did. That's all they did. And when you'd see the army move, you'd have 18,000 people and all their families behind them. So it was a large group, and it was just all the food, everything that was going on. It was a large army. But this is Rome. This is what it looked like at its furthest extent. This is who this fourth beast is. It's Rome, but it's also something else. We get more attention given to the fourth beast here in the scriptures than the other three put together. So it's important for us to know, it's very important for us to know, because we're living in the time of the fourth beast. What, we're living in the Roman Empire? No, we're living in the second half of it. The Roman Empire never was conquered. It just kind of, the western side went one direction, the eastern side lasted till the Middle Ages, almost 1500 actually. And there are elements of it that still exist in a lot of places today.
We are so glad you tuned in to today's edition of the Unsafe Bible with Pastor Ken. For more information about this ministry and what we believe, you can find all you need to know at theunsafebible.com. Want to hear more messages from Daniel? We've got that too. Just look under the Media tab. As you've been listening to this teaching in Daniel, what are some of the things that come to mind? Has anything struck you in a personal way where you relate to Daniel? Maybe some questions have sprung up in your mind about all that's happening in this book. One thing that's a proven fact is that the things that are prophesied about in the Bible come to pass. Daniel's visions are proof of predicted events happening in history or events that will happen in the future. We'd love to connect with you about these things. If you want to connect with us,
Go to the unsafebible.com, find the Connect tab, and select I'm New to fill out the form so we can be in touch. If you want any more info on who we are and what we're about, you'll find that on our website as well. That's theunsafebible.com. Well, that's all we have for today. We hope you'll join us for another edition. There's so much to learn and appreciate about Daniel, a man of God who was tested time and time again, but proved over and over that his faith and hope was in the one true Savior of the world. Despite working for and serving many foreign kings, Daniel's loyalty was to God and God alone. We hope that's the case for you, too.